But I think one of the magic pieces that we put into the book and the magic way to communicate with kids is to really get into their language and understand what makes them laugh, what makes them feel empowered, what makes them feel great about themselves. Because ultimately, that's what we want for our children. We want them to grow up happy, healthy, and confident, and we want them to become fantastic adults and empowered adults. And if you want an empowered adult, my belief is you start empowering them as a child.
Let's talk possibility. Today with Kate and Rod Power. There are certain meaningful and important conversations that we need to be having with children. But these tricky conversations are not being had because we as adults usually find it too uncomfortable to have these conversations. I asked Rod and Kate Power to share some ideas on how to have these conversations with children around sensitive topics. Thank you, Rod and Kate, for agreeing to talk some more with me about this really exciting project that you're working on now. So maybe just to give some context before we get into, having conversations that count, or really meaningful conversations with children, maybe just to give some context to and background of how you two came to write the book, because the book is very much, I think, the context. So over to you.
Well, I was in the police for 15 years, so I saw some horrible things involving kids and a lot around child sexual assault. So it was really in my mind of the problems surrounding it. So when we had our own 3 kids, I knew I needed to protect them, and I thought because of my experience as a police officer I could. But then 2 incidences happened in my own community that made me realise that my kids were vulnerable and that I actually couldn't protect them. And the best way was to educate them about their own private parts so they could protect themselves if need be. And when I went to do this, I found that it was actually a really difficult thing as a parent to do, because this topic is personally confronting. And how do you teach kids in a positive and engaging way? So with this issue, my husband and I, Rod, we got our heads together, and it was the catalyst for my Underpants Rule. And that's how the book came about. So we developed it when we were in the UK, and in its first edition we put it on Amazon just to see how it would go, and we got an amazing feedback. The largest organisation in the UK, the NSPCC, I'm going to let you say the real name.
The National Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Children.
They actually found it. They loved it so much that they put it on their recommended reading list, and they also have chosen it out of all the other books to be in a behavioural study in 2016 in Northern Ireland, which includes 40 schools. So then this book has been seen by experts and improved and survivors, and this is the end product to a lot of work to make it better and better and better. So it is a really fun and easy way to teach your kids how to protect their private parts. So it uses rhyming language, bright and colourful illustrations, and child-friendly humour to teach the Underpants Rule.
And I think just on the communication question, that's what it's all about, is that it's a book that is written like a children's book, because it is a children's book, and it speaks in language that kids understand. One of the things that I thought about in coming up with the book's language, I thought to myself, what do I remember from my childhood? And one of the main things I remember is nursery rhymes. And so that's how we came about having the Underpants Rule. And everything in the book rhymes. It's all in different metre, of course. It's like a song with a verse and a chorus. But the Underpants Rule itself, just to reiterate that, is What's under my pants belongs only to me, and others can't touch there or ask me to see. But safe grown-up or doctor, when I'm not healthy, what's under my pants belongs only to me. And if this rule's broken, I can run, kick or scream. Yes, it's really okay if I make a big scene. My underpants rule has been broken, you see. What's under my pants belongs only to me.
And kids who know the underpants rule, very nice, kids who know the underpants rule are portrayed as superheroes in the book because they're brave and they know what actions to take. So the book, you can read it as just a simple book, just like an everyday storybook, once or twice a month, and your kid will learn how to protect their private parts. But the book is far more than that. You can take it to the next level. It encourages you to teach your child to actually learn the rule, and so they can say it to themselves. And our experience is that kids just pick up on the rule really quickly, and it's amazing how fast they learn it. And you can take it to another level. You can have your kid being a superhero, flying around the house, saying the underpants rule, feeling empowered and strong about it. So it's making the book interactive. And kids learn best when they're engaged in the material and they're actually interacting with it. So it works great for parents or grandparents, but you can easily make it work for educators in schools because you can make it into a play and have your kids interacting with the rule.
So it's a really wonderful tool then that, as you say, parents and teachers can use then to broach a very tricky kind of conversation with children. Because I think, part of... Yes?
Sorry. One of the main feedbacks that we get that why parents don't teach their kids how to protect their private parts is because it's really confronting for them, and that it is really tricky to teach kids in a positive way. And that was one of the reasons why we've made the book, to make parenting easier for them. So it's just like reading a normal storybook to your kids.
Yes, I was just
going to had a question, I think.
Yeah, I was just going to highlight then. So in order, to start a subject, or to have a conversation with a child, it's useful to have a tool, something, so it's not necessarily one-on-one with the child. You're engaging with a book or a game or the Superman cape, superhero cape. So for me, that's just what I'm hearing is to broach a subject with a child. A tool is often useful. Don't you want to add anything?
Yeah, absolutely it is, and I think as well, being a parent, it doesn't come with an instruction manual, right? So I think one of the things that I've learned as a parent is that for me to communicate effectively with my child, what I've got to be able to do is enter their world. That's, and I think that applies for communication across the board. I've got to be able to enter their world. And when I enter their world, then I can start to understand and communicate. Now, that's difficult for a lot of adults because we tend to forget what it was like to be a child. I don't, by the way. That might come across. But I think that's one of the real keys, is to be able to use any tools that are available to you to have the conversations that you need to have in ways that the child can take on board. Because if you have an adult conversation with them, obviously they don't understand, they don't get it. But I think one of the magic pieces that we put into the book and the magic way to communicate with kids is to really get into their language and understand what makes them laugh, what makes them, feel empowered, what makes them feel, great about themselves. Because ultimately, that's what we want for our children. We want them to grow up happy, healthy, and confident, and we want them to become fantastic adults and empowered adults. And if you want an empowered adult, my belief is you start empowering them as a child.
Yeah, great. So, so then in terms of, so I think that's the focus then, or one of the points you're making is we should be focusing with our children on empowering them, so teaching them skills that they need so that they don't get into, awkward situations or threatening situations.
Yeah, so just again I mean, one of the things that happens in the specific issue of child sexual abuse, what we learnt from survivors was that, and this applies to any threatening situation, that there are three basic responses that can happen in any threatening situation: fight, flight, or freeze. And what we discovered in our research was that in most cases, when a child is being, if you like, groomed by a predator, the most prevalent response is freeze, which is the worst one, because they don't know what's happening. They don't understand it because no one's educated them that this is something that could happen. And here is this person who they have been taught, because they're an adult, we teach them to trust adults, or it could be another child, by the way. But because of that, they tend to go into the freeze response. So one of the things that we are doing in the book, it's exactly the same. I mean, Kate's background was as a police officer, and one of the things that she was exposed to was scenario training, where they would put them into a scenario before it had ever happened to them so that they could actually understand what action to take. Now, we don't necessarily put them into the scenario, but we get them to consider different scenarios so that they know what action to take in any given circumstance. And that's the main thing. So we want them to have that either fight or flight response mechanism and able to go, right, I recognise that there is a situation here, bang, I've got to take action.
So the action is I can run, kick or scream. Yes, it's really okay if I make a big scene, and then always tell someone you trust.
Yeah.
So we don't go into the darkness of what is child sexual assault. The scenarios are if your underpants rule is broken. So yeah, so it stays really light.
The action, yeah.
Yeah.
And the focus is on the action. And for me, a key part of that rhyme and what you're doing is giving children permission, as you say, to make a scene. Which I think, just in terms of the work I do, sometimes I feel like saying, like, there's a lot of adults that come to me where they feel like the permission was taken away from them as a child to have a voice, to speak up and to say no. So this rule kind of gives them that permission. Like, in these circumstances, you can make a scene.
Absolutely, and I can tell you again from conversations we've had with survivors that another reason why they're frozen is because they actually felt that either we had one woman talk to us about when she was assaulted, that she was more worried about her father's reaction to her losing it, I think it was a towel or something like that, than she was by what she knew was going to happen there. So she didn't feel she had permission to make a big scene, and that, as you say, is absolutely key.
Great. So then where we are now, then, what you're saying is when we need to speak with children then about really important issues, that part of it is to make it engaging, make it as light-hearted, but focusing on giving children or helping them learn about the actions to take, so that they feel more empowered. So it's not necessarily, as you're saying, we have to go into the nitty-gritties of the darkness, I like how you explain it, of the situation, but it's more, if this happens, you have permission to make a scene. This is, the different actions to take. So I think part of it then is us as adults that need to have these conversations. It sounds like there's a lot of preparation. It's like almost like we need to think a bit, and obviously the tools is a great way, because having the book, it helps us prepare to have that conversation. But for me, I think part of it also, and I wanted to touch base, I think you touched it on it briefly, Rod, was about our own issues with the subject and our own uncomfortableness.
Yes.
So any tips there, or anything that you can share around people who want to develop their communication skills with children in terms of their own issues around the subject, if that makes sense? Yeah.
I think it does. Yeah.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we wrote the book, because we're really aware of parents who do feel really uncomfortable about this topic. So I would suggest them just to read the book just like an ordinary storybook and just get comfortable with it, because it's actually quite funny. When you read it, you'll actually start relaxing. So I think the key is just to relax, let the book do all the work, and once you're at the end of it, you can then, once you're at the end of it, you might feel more comfortable. And the more that a parent can read it, they can actually then take it to the next level and teach your kid about the right names of their private parts if they choose to do so. But the book will do the work for you rather than getting worried or over the top with it. And that is really why we wrote it, really to support parents in this and help them get over themselves and their inhibitions.
I mean, one of my rules around communication in any setting, whether it's with a child or whatever, is if I have an emotional charge about the issue, then I'm going to pass that on to the other person. So one of the things I always try to do is to, if I'm going to have a conversation with someone around an issue, is how do I get rid of my emotional charge so that I can have a positive conversation about it. Now, you can't always do that, but that's where a tool really comes in handy, because as Katie said, it just makes it so easy to read through the book, and that will then allow you to release your own emotional charge as you go.
So the book's for adults as well. But I think that's
just like a great.
I think that's a key point, though, in dealing with our own emotional charge around it, because I think the way you used when you recited the poem earlier, I mean, you said it with such gusto and energy and confidence, and that's obviously what we want to impart to the children that we're speaking to. But if you don't say it with that confidence and you know, there's that uncertainty, as you say, children pick up way more than we give them credit for. So they would pick up that, oh, there's something about this that if mom and dad are not comfortable, I shouldn't be. Yeah, so it's a very important point, I think.
It is a very important point. I'd like to take that even further, because, again, with the research that we've done, one of the things that we've found is that a lot of parents, because they feel uncomfortable, avoid the issue. And so they avoid telling their child or talking to their child about it. And you know, that's the worst possible thing that they can do, because the statistics are so high in terms of the number of children that are affected by this issue. I mean, worldwide, the estimate is somewhere between 1 in 5 and 1 in 7, you know, which is absolutely crazy. If you think about that, what tends to happen for adults is, because they have the emotional charge around it, we then live in a fantasy world and hope that our child won't be the 1 out of 5 or 7 or whatever the actual number really is. And in my business life, I used to have a saying, which is, hope is not a strategy. And that is so true in this particular issue and in any issue that you're wanting to empower your children in. You've got to have the right strategy so that they understand and can take it on board.
And it creates that openness, though, when you put it on the table. So and very much for me, communication is how you put it on the table. So I think your book is talking about the subject in a positive, empowering way, versus in a negative, disempowering way, but at least you're also putting it on the table. You know, you're making it conscious and in the open, and it's something that we do talk about.
So
yes?
Even if you're a parent who really is struggling, by just reading it, even if it's not done with the gusto or the enthusiasm, you're talking about it, you're opening up the communication. So if something should happen or does happen, your kid's going to know, I can talk to mum or dad or whoever read the book about this. You know, so the communications are open, even no matter how someone's read it to them.
And if I could take that even a step further, which is that I think what happens for a lot of parents, and educators and carers who are looking after children is, again, in the avoidance side of things, they're living in that hope, but by avoiding their own issues in doing it, they're passing that on to the child. And we've got to be really clear that the pedophiles who prey on vulnerable children thrive off that. That's how they get the job done, because they thrive off secrecy and they thrive off having that little secret between me and you, and it's our little secret. And that's the sort of stuff that we've got to change. We've got to change the paradigm where we're able to talk about these issues openly, because then that gives permission to our child to talk openly. And when they have permission to talk openly, that's when we'll find out the things that we need to find out.
Mm. Mm. And I think from my reading for our discussion in that around this topic, I think a key part also, and I'd love to just take it further with you, is that if the child does come in and starts says my underpants rule has been broken, that we trust them, we believe them. And I don't know if what's your thoughts on that, but I think if they're saying that so and so is broke the underpants rule, we need to believe them and not say, oh no, that person would never do that. And
absolutely, it's in my experience, it's often the least likely person that you would ever suspect. The really good predators are the ones that you think would be the last person to do it. So you really need to listen to your child and start investigating, because if a child discloses to you and you do nothing, then where are they left?
Yeah.
And
again, to add to that, I'm not sure if you're aware, Telana, but in Australia right now there is a Royal Commission happening, which is examining the incidence of child sexual abuse in institutions. And I got the privilege of seeing one of the commissioners speak, Justice Fitzgerald, just a few weeks ago. And one thing that he said, in fact two things that he said really shocked me. The first one was that the average time that it takes someone to report their crime, in terms of the people that are coming through the Royal Commission, is 22 years.
Sure.
Now that is just shocking. 22 years.
And then it can happen again and again, even for 10 years. That's
empowering, the predators to keep going. But the other really important point that he made was that in the experience of the people who are coming through the Royal Commission, there's very little correlation between the severity, the relative severity of the crime, even though any incidence of child sexual abuse is severe. But there's very little correlation between that and the traumatic effect for the child or for the person in later years. As he put it, relatively minor incidents can have as traumatic an effect as a major incidence of child sexual abuse. And I think the reason behind that, this is not his words, this is mine, I think the major reason behind that is because it is all about trust. It's about trust being broken. And that's what this crime is actually all about. It's about the fact that the victims who come through the process, that's the major thing they talk about, is who do I trust now? And that is a horrible legacy to take through your life, and it becomes the reason why so often people who are abused at an early age have such difficulty in their adult lives, and have mental health issues, have sometimes drug addiction, sometimes crime, etc. And I'm not saying that happens for everybody, but that's the reason why, is because who do I trust now?
Yeah.
So it's just not the predator that you can't trust, it's the person if you disclose and they failed you. So it's really important that parents or carers or educators listen to their kids and take action.
So So maybe then just like a bit about then the listening, and also any tips that you would give to when you are listening and questioning, then so you don't want to make it also too alarming for the child, because especially depending on their age and that. So any tips you can share then in how you communicate with your child to find out what's actually going on?
Well, it's then staying calm and then asking them more questions. So open-ended questions, not putting words in their mouth, but where were they tickling you? What happened? What did they actually do? And really staying calm, and don't put any labels on it. And then if you think that has occurred, then it's time to call the police. But stay calm. Don't say, oh, you've been sexually assaulted. Oh, my goodness, this is terrible. You've got to, be really calm with your own emotions. And then go to the next level. It's always about calm. Everything's fine. Let's move forward.
And I think the other thing too about that is, apart from staying calm, which is absolutely the right advice, I think, I would rather have, personally, I would rather have an issue of a mistake being made than to not believe my child and break that trust.
Yeah.
That's what I would rather do. I don't know. That's each parent's choice, but that's certainly what I would prefer to do.
Sure. So maybe then just to start to wrap up then, how can people know more about what you're doing and get the book?
Well, the book is only available through our website, which is myunderpantsrule.com. And for more information, they can come to our website and find out a lot more things, because there's quite a lot of information there. So it's myunderpantsrule.com.
And for those people listening at the correct time, we're in the process of launching the book via a crowdfunding campaign. And the reason we're doing that is because we felt that the fastest way for us to get the book out there was to self-publish. And so, because I don't know if you've ever dealt with publishers, but they tend to take a long time to make decisions. So we wanted to get it out as quickly as possible. So what we're doing is this crowdfunding campaign to get the first 10,000 books out to children. And that's what it's going to allow us to do. So you can get all of the details for that off our website, myunderpantsrule.com, in case you just missed it before. And then as soon as you go on there, you'll see the sign that's saying that. Now the dates for that, we've already begun. So we started on the 18th of August, and we're going through to the 19th of August, and we're going through to the 18th of September 2015. Because I know that there's people who will see this after the fact, but that's when we're doing the crowdfunding, and the support that we can get from people would be fantastic.
Super. So then any last points you'd like to just share then with parents and educators or adults that would help them have meaningful conversations, the conversations that count with their children?
I just begin by reading the book, and then from there your conversations are going to naturally and easily develop about this topic and other things. And it's a really good way to build your communication, starting when they're young and then through to the teenage years, about lots of tricky subjects, not just about this subject, but it's actually going to closen the bond and build communication throughout their life.
And we can attest to that because we have children who we taught the Underpants Rule at an early age, and a couple of them are now turning into teenagers, and lucky us. But it is really quite amazing because the trust that we developed by tackling those difficult issues at an early age, now that they're getting into teenage years and beyond, it means that the communication is so much more open and trusting.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing, and all the best with your book.
Thank you, Telana. Really appreciate your time.
This was Let's Talk Communication. If you'd like to find out more about the show and my guests Rod and Kate Power, then please go to talkcommunication.innercoaching.co.za. Thanks for listening and keep it real.